bienvenidos. I'm Aries Estrellas Solares, and this week we are discussing the transits taking place from March the 23rd through to the 29th. This week holds a Cazimi and the closing chapter of this eclipse season for the first wave of eclipses in 2025. Chances are, by the time that you're watching this, the story that the eclipses have brought for you is pretty clear and obvious. If not, this week might shed further illumination. With eclipses, they tend to linger a week before and a week after the actual event as well. So we'll probably still be feeling the ripples of this going into April. But we'll stay with this week for now because there's a lot to discuss. On Sunday the 23rd, we have the Sun in Aries making a sextile to Pluto in Aquario. Here we have an opportunity to start off the week with some helpful illumination into what is it that is transforming in our life right now that is encouraging a truer, more raw sense of inner power. We have been in this really activating moment in time, aka March. And so chances are we have all in our own way been experiencing themes of reclaiming our energy and our power, embodying the boundaries that we want to embody, integrating all of the wisdom and the lessons that comes from that. And we're becoming aware of control patterns at play, whether conscious or unconscious, whether from the self or from the world around us. We have, in this moment in time, maybe been able to see things that we hadn't been able to see before amidst so much getting shaken up at this time. So how do you best empower yourself when you do become aware of these control dynamics? And how do you move forward from that with courage and with bravery and with almost this sense of being unstoppable? You know, almost like going through something really cathartic and really weighted and coming out of it on the other side feeling like a warrior or feeling like you've won that battle. This is Sun in Aries, sextile Pluto in Aquario. So we start off the week on that note of being really clear on being able to see the underlying sort of strings that are being pulled. And it doesn't always mean that it's another person. Sometimes it's ourselves. Sometimes it's coming from our psyche. Sometimes we put our own power dynamics at play to keep us safe or to stop us from going to the unknown. This can be a day where we just are so aware of that. And we can ask ourselves, okay, this is helpful. Now what? Now how do I keep going? Monday the 24th, we have the Sun in Aries conjoining Mercury in Aries, which is very retrograde. This is what is known as a Cazimi. It is a point in the planet's retrograde cycle where they get a bit of a boost of life from the sun, and anything that the planet had gotten twisted up in throughout its retrograde moment, this is a time when the sun can kind of offer a bit more clarity. It is a bit of a breather in the retrograde cycle, if you will, where if you weren't sure what the retrograde was about or how it was impacting your life or what it was there to teach you, by the time the Cazimi rolls around, there's really no doubt about it. Things come to the surface to click into place where the issue is not necessarily resolved. We maybe just have more information to move through that retrograde onwards. And so that's what's happening here. And in Aries, we may get a reawakened sort of call to action in our mental realm. What does that mean? We maybe are inspired to shift our neural pathways about how we think about things. Maybe we are confronting the things that limit us from taking charge in our communications and in our conversations and in the way that we think about the world. Maybe this is a time where we feel called to, again, step into our courageous energy in spite of some of the risk that is involved with that. And what is the risk? Well, the risk can be failure. The risk can be visibility, even vulnerability. But with this retrograde in Aries, that both Mercury and Venus are undergoing back into Pisces, vulnerability is a non-negotiable. It's going to come up And so in times where you are very tender and things are coming up to the surface, do you want to navigate them from a place of being a recluse or being really recoiled in on yourself, not having trust in yourself? Or do you want to say, you know what? This is happening in any case, so might as well show up as courageously as I can, let this be a growth edge, and learn as much as I can from it, and let it make me a stronger, more capable person. Again, with this Cazimi, just pay attention to what sudden insights you might be getting at this time. If there was a moment in this retrograde where you really absolutely had to sign a contract and you had the privilege of being able to wait until you did that, you can do it on this day. I wouldn't lean too hard into it, but in the midst of the entire retrograde cycle and considering that Mercury is about to go back into Pisces, this wouldn't be a bad day to finalize anything that is urgent. As we know, Mercury in Pisces is in its fall, and so retrograde as well, it's gonna get muddy. We'll get to that when we do, but for now we can enjoy a little bit of the illumination and clarity that is coming through from this Cazimi. That takes us into Tuesday the 25th, where Mercury, still in Aries, is going to sextile Pluto in Aquario before it goes back into Pisces. With this, it feels like, because the Sun just had this exact sextile to Pluto, it might even be a connected event where maybe early in the week we had insights and illuminations into these Plutonian themes that tend to be power-centric, control-centric, very excavative, very underworld-like. And now with Mercury at the sextile, we can perhaps put a language to it. And so it can be a cathartic exploration of the change that is taking place, where we can intellectualize it maybe to a healthy degree and speak to it, and even integrate it into our story of saying, okay, I know what this is now as it's been brought up to the light, and now I can figure out more or less how this shifts things for me and maybe even my self-image, or how I see my journey at large and how I want to move forward from this. It's a bit of a perspective adjustment where you get all of these juicy details coming from under the surface, and that you can then weld them into place as if you had a sword and you got these runes or glyphs of iron just brought to you, and now you have to weld them into the sword. That imagery just came very quickly because I wanted to incorporate some of those fiery elements, and it's all very Aries, right? And so if that's helpful, I hope it is. If it's not, then in whatever way it makes sense for you to imagine this, or maybe you're just recalling the past couple events that have shown up for you, not just this week, but since the beginning of March, then you kind of know, okay, this Plutonian energy is here to give substance and depth to maybe the chaos that has been amidst. And when we can assign such rich, deep meaning to something, it is empowering. It's empowering in the way that we think about the world and about ourselves. Doesn't mean that it's going to heal everything or fix everything. It just means that we, again, are injected with this dose of courage and bravery and ability to charge forward from that place. Thursday the 27th, we have Venus retrograding back into Pisces. This is a slightly better condition for Venus to be in. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Even though she is retrograde, she can do her Venus activities a bit better here. Now, because we're in this retrograde stage, I think that it's worth it to mention that just because things are under rose-colored glasses again doesn't mean that we need to throw our discernment out the window. We are in this sort of Inanna cycle where Venus is going to the underworld to shed all of her layers and to come to a purer form of being. Whatever themes were active while Venus was in Aries, they don't go away. They maybe just take on a different tone. And the problem at the root of it is still ongoing. The lesson is still ongoing. It's maybe just another layer in, okay, well, how do you handle it when it shows up like this? maybe it's not so rough around the edges and easy to say no to. Maybe now it's more like tempting, it's more alluring. And we can have a lot of fun with this. Venus retrograding through Pisces doesn't necessarily bring forth, a illusional component. And I think I'm weaving in a lot of the illusion because Neptune is here and Venus will conjoin Neptune later in the day. But, we can revel in these more creative, pleasurable, feeling sort of spaces, these ethereal, otherworldly spaces, without it letting wash over us entirely and override our capacity to discern what is real and what is delusional, what is showing up in a grounded and concrete way, and what is maybe something I should sit with up until, maybe when Venus stations direct. As I just touched on, she's going to conjoin Neptune. And so, again, trust your intuition, enjoy the show, but don't get swept up in the waves, no matter how glittery and fun they seem, because this is maybe a little bit of like a time to see how well you can ground into your inner authority and to not let the world around you influence how you feel, but for you to really trust your instincts and your gut. So it's a little lovelier. Venus, again, she loves being in Pisces. My biggest takeaway would probably be discernment, discernment, discernment. Follow your intuition. If you're confused about how to tap into your discernment or intuition, I'm happy to make a separate video about that, but you can let me know below. Okay, cool. So Saturday the 29th, we've got the eclipse in Aries, and we had an Aries eclipse last year, and it was loud, it was combative, it was harsh on a world stage. On an internal landscape stage, it was maybe not as chaotic, maybe there weren't as many moving parts. It really does depend on where it lands on for you. As far as this year's Aries eclipse, this is the last one that we're having in Aries. The moon just conjoined Mercury retrograde in Aries right before Mercury is going into Pisces. The moon also followed in the steps of the sun and Mercury and sextiled Pluto. This eclipse is ruled by Mars, still in Cancer, no longer retrograde, and it's all kind of muddy. Muddy not just because Mercury is retrograde and about to go back into Pisces, not just muddy because Venus is retrograde and has already gone back into Pisces, not just muddy because Mars is in Cancer and it's fallen in Cancer. It's muddy also just because of the nature with which these Pluto and Aquarius teams are sweeping in and bringing things down to earth. And I mean down to the cavernous sort of landscape of going deep into it all. And so with this sextile that takes place, you really have to ask yourself, okay, there is a lot of loud chaos happening around this eclipse, but it is serving a very specific purpose, and that can be constructive. Sextiles are constructive for us. They lend a helping hand, so to say. And it doesn't mean the event itself is easier. It just means that there is something there for us to work with. There's always something there for us to work with, right? Even if it was a square. But with a sextile, I think it helps us to say like, okay, if we're going to go deep, let's go deep. If this is going to be loud, let it be loud. If it's going to be muddy and confusing, let it be muddy and confusing. I at least know. I at least can see what it's going to be and best prepare for that. Needless to say, if you are able to, on any sort of level, to clear as much space for yourself as possible for this week, I would highly suggest it. Maybe requesting a day off. If you don't have the capacity for that, making sure that you are trying to get as much sleep as you can, rest, hydrate, whatever it is. If you have a park nearby and you never go to the park, go to the park. Do something that's going to nourish you and give you batteries, because this is a sort of burnout kind of feeling. And the fact that it's happening in Aries with Mars in Cancer, it's giving a little bit of burnout. It's a good time to really just let yourself rest and let life show you what it wants to show you. That I think is always the best approach with eclipses. Not passivity, but a intentional level of allowing and having this collaborative relationship with life where, yes, you are working towards things and you are making decisions actively to make your life go a certain way, and you're also getting feedback from life. And you also understand that so much is still out of your control. And it's not about being able to control everything. It's about being able to self-regulate and show up in the best way that you can amidst the unexpected, amidst everything going topsy-turvy, amidst chaos and war and violence. Because I talked a lot about like activism and protests in my previous forecast, talking about the first eclipse in Virgo. There's room for that here. And I don't think that that's going to go away. 2025 onwards, there's going to be a lot of change. Again, this is a Pluto and Aquarius sort of vibe. As I've mentioned, this is going to keep showing up. How do you integrate that into your reality? Do you show up in a certain capacity for that? Do you unplug and disconnect and do one thing? Is one right? Is one the other? How do you perceive it? And just sort of finding your grounding even in that. So it's a little bit of work, but I think that it's rewarding to take the time to ask ourselves where we stand on certain issues in a time where so much is changing. And I firmly believe that things are changing for the better in the long run. It may not seem like it now, it may not feel like it now, but this is all culminating so that something new can be birthed that is in alignment with life on earth, with love for the earth, with a higher consciousness that takes into consideration life beyond our own comforts. I will not let myself go too far into a tangent there. Mercury is going to then retrograde back into Pisces and conjoin Neptune almost instantly. Whilst the eclipse just happened to an exactitude, it's basically all happening at the same time. So what this tells me is that any information that is coming your way at this time, take it with a grain of salt. Details are bound to shift. Corrections are going to be made, and you may not be getting the full picture at this time. There might be a lot of illusions of grandeur, aka things seeming a lot bigger than they are, or the whole picture not being shared. There might be delusional leadership abound, saying one thing, but maybe another group saying another thing. So if it feels absurd, or if it feels too good to be true, if it feels idealistic, or if it's just so much noise in your head, don't take it at face value. Take it with a grain of salt. And I think it's just going to be a theme where I keep referring to resourcing into your toolbox for these forecasts, because it's just an invaluable tool. And I'm starting to realize I should probably make a video on what it means to even have a toolbox for your energy and your self-regulating capacities. And so I will share that next at some point. But overall, this week it's wonky. It's empowering, it's serving a greater purpose, and it's very intense and it's very catalyzing, as eclipse weeks and eclipse periods tend to be. We're going to be discussing the first week of April next week, where we'll still be feeling these eclipse stories kind of tapering out. But realistically, we're in this eclipse dance constantly. They happen twice a year for 2 weeks at a time. And so we get a little bit of an intensive crash course in one aspect of life, and then we get to integrate it. And then it comes back around, and then we get to integrate it. And it's this ebb and flow. And so just be curious about whatever it is that's coming through, whatever it is that's showing up for you, whether that's a person, a situation, a job, losing a job, whatever it looks like. And if you feel like you're not equipped for all of it, that's okay as well. We're not always going to be entirely equipped for a situation when it shows up, because oftentimes it's the first time we're encountering a situation like that. But we can learn throughout it what it is that we wish that we had, or what helps us feel connected to our sense of safety and stability throughout it. And the next time something similar shows up, we can move from there. I just want to say it's okay if you've not been having an easy time. This doesn't tend to be a rose-colored, smooth sort of set of weeks anyway for anybody. If you've been having that kind of vibe, then amazing. I'm so curious about what your chart looks like, because you're in this moment where the eclipses and these retrogrades are working for you. But if it's challenging and if it's difficult, just know it's not just you. You are still powerful, you're still capable, and these astrological transits are just mirroring for us these events that are coming through and showing us where we have the capacity to expand and to be more ourselves in the aftermath of it all. So that's the week, and as I've been doing in the last few forecasts, I'm going to draw a card to give us any final messages that we can best use at this time to navigate the planetary world energies at play. And so this is the part of the video where I invite you to take a deep breath, to notice how easy it is to relax in this moment and to center. Pay attention to any sounds around you, whether they are sweet or sharp. And I love it when the cards fall. So one just fell on the floor. Let me grab it. Okay, we have the Star. This is one of my favorite cards. It's one of my favorite cards, and I love it so much because it's this balance of remaining grounded in life as we dream what is possible, our wildest dreams. It shows that we need to nurture both for us to get there. We may have a vision of something that we want to bring to fruition, and maybe it feels all the way out here and you're like, how do I get it? How do I get it? But then, you have the mundane and you're like, I don't know if I can give this my energy for much longer. You have to do both. And that doesn't mean that it's always going to be easy to do both, but if you can dedicate a little bit of feeding that dream at least once a day, and then showing up in this more mundane reality in the meantime until you get to where you want to be, it helps life feel purposeful. And I love the Star so much because obviously you wish upon a star, and you have these wishes for whatever it is that your heart desires, and it's something that makes us feel alive and embeds us with magic. I think that it's this cycle of seeing something that is available in the ether and desiring for it to be on earth. Not just for us either, to share with other people, to make this planet a more magical and beautiful place, because this planet has so much room for us to share what we love and what we're passionate about. And if we're only creating for ourselves and not for others, then we don't get to enjoy how beautiful and expansive that process can be. There's 8 stars, and stars represent not just making a wish, but the very nature of astrology is paying attention to the stars. They are not just, balls of gas that emit light in outer space, but they have an energy to them that ripples down to the earth that we can feel. This is a reminder of our connection to the universe. It's a reminder of our connection to life as it is. Nothing is separate. It feels very tied to Venus and Mercury's re-entry to Pisces because it brings that energy back. When everything has started to feel very sharp and very loud, sometimes we need to step back and take in the bigger picture of what it means to be a human on planet Earth, floating in space. Not to, take us too out of perspective here. And that's why I also love that she's still on the ground. How do you incorporate the greater picture of life and then remain grounded and share that with others? Share that with people who maybe have lost their connection to magic or their sense of the heavenly realms. I feel like this card is saying, yes, things feel bumpy, things feel rocky, and your dreams are still valid. Actually, your dreams are needed. They are necessary. Don't lose sight of them. Don't stop nurturing them. Don't lose focus on them. And continue to come back to yourself. Continue to nurture your body, to feed your body. Continue to still take care of what you need to take care of on Earth. And it's this sort of balance. I love that we got this card for the end of this week. I feel like this is just sort of like a silver lining, and it feels really beautiful. If you are ever curious about having a more in-depth tarot reading, I do offer that as well in my website and my consultations page, where you will also find offerings for full natal chart readings, your head readings. If you're interested, I will link that down below at audisolaris.net. With that concludes our weekly Astro Talk. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week where we'll discuss the first week of April. Hasta luego. Adios.